Hello guys, welcome back. So this is the result from the source using the debris source tool in Houdini, and this is the sim. Where is it? And this is the result of 100 frames. I think it's looking pretty cool, and I love the interaction and the interactivity of all the particles. I think it's working pretty well. Now let's continue and do something different. So we've seen the source. We've seen this guy, which is very cool. Let me change this to white. And what I like to do right now, the emission is continuous. It's emitting from basically a constant amount of time, for a constant amount of time, and I don't want that. I want to have an instant emission that only happens for a couple of frames. And if we take a look at the color of these guys, we see that they start white and then they quickly fade off to something different. And we can isolate when the particles are only white, when they are at this state, which means they're moving really fast or they're just getting born. And this way we can take a fragment or a slice of their lifetime, and this will create the more interesting emission, or the extra layer that we can use, for example, to emit bigger chunks of objects instead of just small debris. So the way I'm going to do that is using the velocity, the color itself. So this guy, let's see, so not the velocity, sorry. I'm going to use the same source. Let's copy it and do it on the other side. I'm going to create a point VOP. I'm going to take the existing color and just run it through a ramp. Okay, and with this I can now remap the color and only keep a small portion when they are, let's say, this color. Okay, and I can even kill the super bright one, and now we're going to see them snap. See, they're flickering for a moment, and then they are off. And maybe let's turn this off. Set this to white. So we're going to see them flicker and then disappear. And this is just remapping the existing color, because the existing color starts white and then fades off gradually over time. We don't want to take all that fade off. We just want to remove all that. So I'm going to put down a blast node, say at cd.x is less than 0.1, 0.2. I want to delete the points, and if we hit play, you can see they're emitting for an instant and then disappearing. And this can create a much more interesting source. We can remove also any points that are not moving at all using this guy, using the velocity basically. So let's see. So we deleted the points. Let's see, this is the velocity. So we can increase the scale, maybe only if it moves 0.5. Yeah, something like that. And this instantaneous emission is now, it's going to create a different source. So we're going to use that to emit something different if we wanted to. But what I want to do is I want to expand these points, or show you guys a different technique to that I use to expand the points. Right now, after all this deletion, actually I'm gonna go a bit more aggressive here and here as well. So after all the deletion that we've done, we don't have a lot of points left over. And I want to expand these guys. I want to increase the amount of points so that when we emit from them, we have enough data to work with. And the way I'm going to do that is using a point replicate. Now, what a point replicate does is basically copies a set of points onto the existing point. So right now, let's say we have this guy. It's going to create a sphere around it and fill it with points. So let me change a few things here. I'm going to leave it at 100 points, and we have different shapes. We can choose a box, a sphere, and or a point. I'm gonna set it to a sphere and lower the radius. I don't want it to be too big. Maybe something like that. Something like that. And then let's add a little bit of noise to break this up. And we have to make sure that we copy the source attributes, because we want to inherit everything, like the velocity and names and things like that, or any other attribute that we need. But now the source is pretty messed up. We don't have any, we don't have any interesting emission anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and restore the original state by projecting these points onto the original mesh. So this is the SDF geometry, the low-res version. I'm going to use this for now. We can use the high-res one, but this is fine. So I'm going to project these points onto this mesh, and with the ray node, let's create a null. With the ray node, I'm not going to use the normal. I'm just going to set it to use the minimum distance, and this will automatically figure out what's the nearest neighboring point and basically snap the points to it. Let me reduce this to 0.1. Something like that. As you can see now, if I template the original geometry, you can see the objects are all stacked. And this is going to be a much more interesting source. Now, I'm going to write this to disk. And this is the result. Let me let me paste the correct path here. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit different than the original one, but I think it's going to work fine. So this one I didn't delete the points yet, so I'm going to do that by using the velocity again, and then removing them. And this is an older emission, so I think the newer one is much better. I'm actually going to recopy these two guys, and that way it's consistent with what we have. Cool. So it emits only for a few frames. I think the number of points here is much higher than the one I had. And then I'm just going to copy the same setup, the same pop network and everything, and use that as well. So the main particle sim is pretty simple. I think the more interesting part is the source itself, and then the complex part is the solving the collision, which we've done. And I think what happened with this example, now looking at it, this object, when we viewed the result, it was importing the wrong popnet. So I just realized this. So I'm gonna play blast both of them. The previous result that I showed you guys for the debris was not for the correct result, and I was looking at the object falling off and it's not emitting anything. So this was the issue. I'll run both of them, and then we'll do a preview in the next video. Let me fix this as well. Maybe this one we can do live now. Cool. So it's working, and then let me go back to this one. Yeah, so the previous flip book that I showed you guys was for the previous result, and it's completely different from this one. This is the one I was looking for, and I was confused from the trail, and I thought it's the correct one, but it's not. This is the one. So I'm gonna let this run, and we'll pause for a second. We'll resume when it's done. Hello guys, and welcome back. So this is the result. I changed the background to black. As you can see, we have all kinds of cool emission now from the falling object. You can see here the particles are sliding onto the object. I'm gonna preview some frames with the geometry on, and it's quite a high-res sim at the moment, so that's why it's using more than the memory is filling up. The 20 gigabytes limit is filling up. Actually, let's go back and let's template this. Let's hit play just for a couple of frames. As you can see now, we're getting the proper emission between the cracks that I was looking for in this guy as well. So all looks good. And you can use that edge as well to enhance some of this. Both methods are fine, and I highly encourage you guys to explore both of them. So cool. Let's see how much points we are at the moment. Cool. So 2 million. It's quite good. And this is the parts that I was talking about. So with the debris source, we can get some of these effects pretty quickly. Cool. Okay. So the next part that we were looking at is isolating the the clicks, basically an instant frame emission. I'm actually going to lower the density here to 10 to make it faster, and I'm going to use this source directly with the sim. I'm going to delete the old one that I brought in, ignore that. I'm going to use this one. Pardon me. Let's take a look. Okay, start this off. Cool, so this is the instantaneous emission, which is probably still high, but again, it's another layer that we can add on top. As long as the source is different and it emits for a different period of time, we can add that and layer it differently. We can also change the noise and the properties of these points. For example, they fall in faster, they fall in slower, and that creates different levels of complexity, and the more elements, the better. So this is the second one. Cool. So in the next video, now for real, we're going to create the smoke trails and start creating the smoke simulation for our RPD. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.